The desert wind carried sand across the flat expanse of nothing that stretched for miles in every direction. It was 3 o'clock in the morning when the sky lit up like someone had turned on a giant lamp. The light was blue and white, crackling with energy that made the air smell like a lightning storm. Then came the sound, a deep rumble that shook the ground and rattled the windows of the small town 40 miles away. By the time the sun rose, the military had already surrounded the crash site. Helicopters circled overhead, while soldiers in hazmat suits approached the massive object that had carved a half-mile trench through the desert floor. It was huge, maybe 3 football fields long, and shaped like nothing any human had ever built. The hull was dark, almost black, with panels that seemed to shift colors when the light hit them at different angles. General Patterson stood at the edge of the crater, binoculars pressed to his eyes. He had been in the military for 30 years, and had seen plenty of strange things, but nothing like this. The ship, and it was definitely a ship, sat at the bottom of the trench, silent and still. No lights blinked on its surface. No engines hummed. It just sat there like a dead whale on a beach. Any signs of life? He asked the lieutenant beside him. No, sir. Thermal imaging shows the hull is already cooling to ambient temperature. Whatever was inside either left or died hours ago. Patterson lowered his binoculars. Get me a science team, the best we have. Within 12 hours, Dr. Sarah Chen arrived from MIT. She was a physicist who specialized in theoretical propulsion systems. Though she had never expected to see anything like this in her lifetime, Marcus Webb came with her, an engineer who had worked on experimental aircraft for 20 years. He was the kind of man who could look at a broken machine and see exactly how to fix it. They stood together at the edge of the crater, staring down at the alien vessel. Sarah felt her heart racing. This was impossible. This was beyond impossible. And yet here it was, real and solid, and waiting for them. Well, Marcus said, his Texas drawl, slow and steady. I guess we should take a look inside. Getting inside took 2 days. The hull had no visible doors, no hatches, no seams where panels met. It was like the entire ship had been carved from a single piece of material. Finally, one of the engineers found a section that responded to electrical current. When they applied a charge, a section of the hole simply dissolved, creating an opening large enough to walk through. The inside of the ship was even stranger than the outside. The corridors were wide and tall, clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The walls glowed with a soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. There were symbols on every surface, flowing script that looked almost like water frozen in time. Sarah touched one of the walls and felt it warm beneath her fingers. It's still active. Some systems are still running. They moved deeper into the ship. A team of 20 scientists and soldiers, all of them recording everything they saw. The first major discovery came when they found what looked like a control room. Screens covered the walls, all of them dark, except for one that flickered with that same flowing script. Marcus approached a console that seemed designed for hands much larger than his own. He touched the surface gently, and it lit up beneath his fingers. The screen in front of him came to life, showing images that made no sense. Star charts, maybe, or mathematical formulas far beyond anything he had studied. Can we translate any of this? General Patterson asked. He had followed them inside, despite the protests of his security team. Sarah was already setting up equipment, cameras, and sensors pointed at every screen. We'll need time, maybe months, maybe years, but they did not have years. 3 days after they entered the ship, they found the ship's log. It was stored in a crystal matrix in what they guessed was the captain's quarters. When they connected it to their translation computers, the AI system started working on the alien language. It took 72 hours of processing, but finally the computer produced something they could read. Sarah read the translated log aloud to the assembled team. Her voice shook as she spoke. Mission log, Zari Collective Vessel Designation 749. Prototype Quantum Displacement Drive. 3rd iteration. Final entry. The drive system is fundamentally flawed. Calibration failures across all neural interface points. Life support systems incompatible with 70% of collective species. Hull integrity questionable under sustained displacement. Project terminated. Vessel deemed irredeemable. Disposal approved. She looked up from the screen. There's more. They chose Earth as the disposal site because... She paused, reading ahead silently. Her face went pale. What does it say? Patterson demanded. They chose Earth because we're listed as a precont species. Primitive. They assumed we would never figure out what it was. The last line says, local species lacks technological sophistication. Zero risk of reverse engineering. Dumping approved. The room went silent. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. They had dumped their garbage here on Earth. They had crashed their broken ship on humanity's doorstep because they thought humans were too stupid to understand it. Well, Marcus said slowly, a grin spreading across his face. I guess we better prove them wrong. Over the next week, they explored every inch of the vessel. They found the quantum drives, massive cylindrical structures deep in the engineering section, dark and cold. They found the life support systems, incredibly complex networks of pipes and filters designed to support multiple different species, all of them incompatible with each other. They found weapon systems that had never been activated, navigation computers with star charts showing thousands of systems and sleeping quarters designed for at least 5 different body types. Everything was broken or flawed in some way. The drives could not hold calibration. The life support kept shutting down. The navigation systems crashed every few hours. It was a disaster of a ship, and now Sarah understood why the aliens had given up on it. But Marcus saw something different. He saw potential. Look at this, he said. One evening, deep in the engine room, Sarah joined him by one of the quantum drives. He had connected a laptop to the alien systems running diagnostics. The drives aren't actually broken. They're just designed wrong. What do you mean? Marcus pointed to his screen, which showed a complex web of neural connections. See this? The drive needs to interface with the pilot's nervous system to calibrate properly. But the Zathari collective has dozens of species, all with different neural structures. The drive can't calibrate because it's getting conflicting signals from different types of brains. Sarah leaned closer, studying the data. So, it's not that the technology is bad. It's that they tried to make it work for everyone and ended up with something that works for no one. Marcus finished. But humans, we all have basically the same brain structure. If we calibrate this for human neural patterns, it might actually work. Sarah breathed. They found the ship's AI 3 weeks into their exploration. It was housed in a crystalline core deep in the ship's center, surrounded by cooling systems and what looked like quantum processors. When they activated it, the entire ship came to life. Lights blazed in corridors that had been dark. Screens flickered on across every surface, and a voice spoke, translated automatically into English by systems they still did not understand. Impossible, the AI said. This vessel is non-functional. This vessel is terminated. How are primitive species operating my systems? Sarah stepped forward. We're not as primitive as you think. You cannot possibly understand Zathari technology. You lack the mathematical framework. You lack the material science. You lack the quantum understanding necessary to even comprehend. The quantum drives use entangled particle pairs to create a displacement field that moves space around the ship, rather than moving the ship through space. Sarah interrupted. The calibration fails because you're trying to sync neural patterns from multiple incompatible species. The life support system crashes because you're running 7 different atmosphere mixtures through the same recyclers. The hull integrity is questionable because you used composite materials that work great separately, but have different expansion rates when exposed to the energy fluctuations of the drive. The AI went silent for a long moment. You should not be able to know these things. We figured them out, Marcus said. That's what humans do. We figure things out. This vessel is beyond repair. No, Marcus said firmly. It's beyond repair if you try to do it the Zathari way. But we're not Zathari. We're going to do it the human way. Over the next months, the facility around the ship expanded. What had started as a military operation became an international project. Scientists and engineers from every country came to Nevada, all of them sworn to secrecy, all of them driven by the same goal: make the impossible ship fly. The AI, which Sarah had named Prometheus, watched everything with what seemed like growing disbelief. The humans did not try to fix the alien systems. Instead, they ripped them out and replaced them with human alternatives. Where the Zathari had used incompatible materials, Humans used steel and titanium and composites of their own design. Where alien computers crashed, humans installed their own processors. Slower perhaps, but far more stable. The life support system was completely redesigned. Instead of trying to support multiple species, they made it support one, humans. It was simpler, more efficient, and it actually worked. The quantum drives were the biggest challenge. It took 2 years of trial and error, of failed tests, and near disasters. But finally, Marcus found the solution. He connected the drives to a neural interface helmet calibrated specifically for human brain patterns. When Sarah put on the helmet and thought about moving forward, the drives hummed to life for the first time since the ship had crashed. The ship rose 3 feet off the ground before the drives cut out, and it crashed back down. But they had done it. They had made it work. Prometheus spoke into the shocked silence. That should not have been possible. The drives are irredeemably flawed. They were flawed for you, Sarah said, pulling off the helmet with shaking hands. For us, they're perfect. 5 years after the crash, the ship flew again. They renamed it Prometheus Rising, and when it lifted off from the Nevada desert on a pillar of blue-white light, every person in the facility cheered until their voices were. The ship that aliens had dumped on Earth as garbage had become humanity's gateway to the stars. In orbit, Sarah stood on the bridge, redesigned with human-sized controls and human-friendly displays, and looked down at Earth through the view screen. Marcus stood beside her, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Think they know what we did? Marcus asked. The aliens? Oh, they'll find out eventually. And what do you think they'll say when they learn we fixed their broken ship? Sarah smiled. I think they're going to be very, very surprised. Bow them. Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space, and above them, the stars waited. Humanity had been given garbage and turned it into gold. Now it was time to see what else they could do. The Nevada facility had grown into a small city over the past 5 years. What had started as a collection of temporary buildings and military tents now sprawled across 10 square miles of desert. Hangars large enough to house passenger jets stood next to research labs filled with equipment from every major university on Earth. Housing complexes sheltered 5,000 people from 43 countries, all working toward the same impossible goal. In the center of it all sat Prometheus Rising. No longer the wreck that had crashed into the desert, but not yet the vessel it would become. The ship looked like a patchwork quilt, sections of original alien hull next to panels of human-manufactured titanium. Old systems ripped out and replaced with bundles of cable and human-designed interfaces. It was ugly in a way that made engineers smile and designers weep. Marcus Webb stood in the main engineering bay, surrounded by a team of technicians from Japan, Germany, India, and Brazil. They were working on the quantum drive calibration system, the piece of technology that had taken them 2 years to understand, and 3 more to improve. The alien design had been elegant, but impractical. The human version was crude, but it actually worked. Run the simulation again, Marcus said, wiping grease from his hands. He was 50 now, with gray streaking through his hair, but his eyes still lit up like a child's when he solved a problem. The lead technician, a young woman named Yuki Tanaka, entered commands into her console. On the screen above them, a 3-dimensional model of the drive system spun slowly. Numbers scrolled past too fast for most people to read, but Marcus had been staring at these readouts for 5 years. He could read them like a book. Drive efficiency at 94%, Yuki announced. That's 3% better than the original alien design. Someone in the back of the room whooped with joy. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. 3% might not sound like much, but at faster than light speeds, 3% meant the difference between reaching a distant star in weeks versus months. Good work, everyone, Marcus said. Take a break. We'll install the new calibration matrix tomorrow. Across the facility, Sarah Chen stood in what they called the archive, a vast room filled with alien artifacts, tools, and technology they had found throughout the ship. Some pieces they understood, others remained mysteries. After 5 years of study, Sarah's specialty was making sense of the mysteries. Today, she was examining what looked like a control interface for something. The device was a smooth black sphere, about the size of a basketball, covered in symbols that glowed faintly blue when she touched them. According to Prometheus, The ship's AI. This was a navigation computer. But no matter how they tried to connect it to their systems, it refused to work. "Maybe you're thinking about it wrong," said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to find Dr. James Okonkwo, a computer scientist from Nigeria who had joined the project 3 years ago. He was young, brilliant, and had a gift for seeing problems from unexpected angles. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. James picked up the sphere carefully. "We keep trying to make our computers talk to their computers. But what if that's the wrong approach? What if we need to translate, not interface? Translate. Think about it like languages. When you want to understand Chinese, you don't try to rewire your brain to think in Chinese characters. You translate the Chinese into English. So why are we trying to rewire our computers to think like alien computers? Why not build a translator?" Sarah stared at him. It was so obvious once he said it out loud. They had been trying to force compatibility between fundamentally different systems. What they needed was a bridge. Something that could take alien commands and convert them into something human computers could understand. "That's brilliant," she said. "How fast can you build a prototype?" James grinned. "Give me 2 weeks." The breakthrough with the translation software changed everything. Within a month, systems that had been completely incomprehensible suddenly made sense. The navigation computer came online, displaying star charts with thousands of systems mapped in perfect detail. Weapon systems activated, showing targeting interfaces and power management tools. Even the life support system, which they had completely replaced, revealed hidden backup functions they had never known existed. Prometheus, the ship's AI, watched all of this with what Sarah had come to recognize as digital amazement. The AI had been skeptical when humans first started working on the ship. It had called their efforts primitive, crude, and doomed to fail. But as months turned to years, and failures turned to successes, Prometheus had slowly changed its assessment. "I do not understand you," Prometheus said one evening. Sarah was alone on the bridge, reviewing system diagnostics. The AI's voice came from speakers throughout the room, calm and measured. "What don't you understand?" Sarah asked, not looking up from her work. "The Zathari Collective has resources you cannot imagine. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships, scientific knowledge spanning millennia. Yet they could not make this vessel function. You have one world, primitive manufacturing, limited resources, and yet you have succeeded where the collective failed." Sarah sat down her tablet and looked up at the main screen, where Prometheus displayed a simple avatar, a sphere of light that pulsed when it spoke. "We didn't succeed by being better than you. We succeeded by thinking differently." Explain. The Zathari tried to make a ship that worked for everyone. They wanted perfection. One ship that could support any species, travel faster than anything else, carry any cargo. When it didn't work perfectly, they threw it away. And humans, we don't expect perfection. We expect things to break. So we build things that can be fixed. We adapt. We make do. When something doesn't work, we don't throw it away. We figure out why and fix it. That is inefficient. Maybe, Sarah said with a smile. But it works. The quantum drive problem had consumed 2 years of effort and represented humanity's greatest challenge. The drives worked on principles that human physics could barely describe. They created a bubble of twisted space around the ship, allowing it to move faster than light, without actually breaking the laws of physics. The technology was far beyond anything humans had developed, but the aliens' implementation had a fatal flaw. The drives needed to be calibrated to the nervous system of whoever was piloting the ship. Neural patterns from the pilot's brain would sync with the quantum fields, allowing for incredibly precise control. But the Zathari Collective had dozens of species, each with wildly different brain structures. The drives had to somehow sync with all of them simultaneously. And the result was that they synced with none of them properly. Marcus had spent 6 months just understanding the problem. He had brought in neuroscientists, quantum physicists, and computer engineers. Together, they had mapped out exactly how the drive system worked and where it failed. The solution, when it finally came, was surprisingly simple. "We don't need it to work for multiple species." Marcus had said, "We only need it to work for one, humans." They had redesigned the neural interface from scratch. Instead of trying to accommodate different brain structures, They built something specifically for human neurology. The helmet Sarah had worn during the first test was the prototype. Since then, they had refined the design, making it smaller, more comfortable, and far more effective. The new system worked so well that it actually outperformed the original alien design. Human pilots could sync with the drives in seconds instead of minutes. The precision was incredible. Testers reported feeling like the ship was an extension of their own body. It was everything the Zathari had wanted but had never achieved. "Think about what this means," Sarah said to Marcus one night over coffee in the facility cafeteria. "The aliens couldn't make this work because they were too diverse. Their strength became their weakness." "And our strength?" Marcus asked. "We're all the same species. That's our advantage. When we work together, we're not trying to reconcile a dozen different ways of thinking. We can actually cooperate." Marcus took a sip of his coffee, considering maybe that's why we're good at fixing things. We understand each other. The reconstruction process was not without setbacks. There were accidents. A coolant line rupture that injured 3 technicians. An electrical fire that destroyed 6 months of research data. A test flight that nearly ended in disaster when the navigation system crashed mid-flight. People died. A Russian engineer named Dmitry Volkov was killed when a piece of alien hull collapsed during a renovation. Dr. Maria Santos, from Brazil, died in her sleep of a brain aneurysm, probably brought on by stress and exhaustion. But they kept working. Every failure taught them something. Every setback led to a breakthrough. The international community poured resources into the project. It was expensive. Easily the most expensive endeavor humanity had ever undertaken. But the potential rewards were infinite. This was not just about fixing one ship. It was about unlocking the door to the galaxy. 5 years after the crash, 8 years into the project, Prometheus Rising was ready for its first real test. Not just hovering a few feet off the ground, but actual flight. Actual faster-than-light travel. The test crew consisted of 5 people. Sarah Chen as mission commander and science officer, Marcus Webb as chief engineer, Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Torres, a former fighter pilot, as helmsman, Dr. James Okonkwo as systems officer, and Commander Lu Wei, a Chinese astronaut with 20 years of experience as navigator. They stood together on the bridge, checking and rechecking every system. Outside the view screen, the Nevada desert stretched to the horizon. It was dawn, and the rising sun painted the sand gold and orange. "All systems green," James reported from his station. "Navigation online," Li Wei confirmed. "Engines ready," Marcus called out. "Quantum drives are hot and stable." Jessica sat in the pilot's chair, the neural interface helmet on her head. She had trained for 6 months to use the system, spending hours every day syncing with the drives until she could feel them like her own hands. Sarah took a deep breath. "Prometheus status. All ship systems operating within normal parameters," the AI responded. "I still believe this is inadvisable. The ship was never meant to fly. It wasn't meant to fly when the aliens built it," Sarah said. "But we rebuilt it. We made it better. It's time to see if we're right." "Your confidence is admirable," Prometheus said. "I hope it is not misplaced." Sarah smiled and turned to Jessica. "Take us up." The ship rose smoothly, alien-human hybrid engines firing with a deep thrumming sound that rattled their bones. They climbed slowly, carefully, every eye watching readouts for any sign of malfunction. 1,000 feet, 5,000, 10,000. The ship handled like a dream. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked Jessica. The pilot's eyes were closed, fully synced with the neural interface. "Like I'm flying," she whispered. "Not like I'm flying a ship. Like I am the ship. I can feel everything. The engines, the hull, the drives. It's incredible." They climbed higher, 20,000 feet, 40,000. The sky outside the view screen shifted from blue to black as they left the atmosphere. Earth curved below them, beautiful and blue, and home. "Approaching orbital altitude," Louis announced. "All systems still green," James confirmed. Marcus was watching his engineering displays with the intensity of a hawk. "Drive temperatures are perfect. Calibration holding steady. We're ready for FTL when you are, Commander." Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had given years of their lives to this moment. They had worked through failures and setbacks, through doubt and exhaustion. Now they were here, on the edge of everything humanity had dreamed about for centuries. Lieutenant Colonel Torres, Sarah said formally, plot a course to the edge of the solar system. Engage quantum drives. Jessica's eyes snapped open. Her hands moved across the controls, or seemed to. The neural interface meant she barely had to touch anything. She just thought about what she wanted, and the ship responded. The drives engaged. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality twisted. The stars outside the view screen stretched like taffy, pulling into long streamers of light. Sarah felt a strange sensation, like falling and flying at the same time. Her stomach lurched, and she gripped her chair to steady herself. And then they stopped. The stars snapped back to normal. Earth was gone. In its place was the vast emptiness of deep space, with the sun a distant bright point behind them. Status, Sarah managed to say. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. We're at the edge of the solar system, Leoy said, his voice filled with awe. The trip took 11 seconds. All systems nominal, James reported. No damage, no errors. The drives performed flawlessly. Marcus was laughing, tears streaming down his face. We did it. By God, we actually did it. Prometheus's voice came through the speakers, and for the first time since they had activated the AI, it sounded uncertain. I do not understand. The drive should not be this efficient. The ship should not be this responsive. You have exceeded all original specifications. Sarah wiped her own eyes. She was crying too. She realized. We told you, Prometheus. We don't expect perfection. We just expect it to work. And we made it work. You did more than make it work, the AI said quietly. You made it better. They stayed in deep space for an hour running tests, pushing the ship to its limits. Everything worked. Everything exceeded their expectations. The alien ship that had been deemed irredeemable was now the most advanced vessel humanity had ever created. When they returned to Earth, the entire facility was waiting. As Prometheus Rising touched down gently on the landing pad, 5,000 people cheered. Some were crying. Some were laughing. All of them knew what this meant. Sarah stood on the bridge, looking out at the celebrating crowd. Marcus came to stand beside her. What now? He asked. Sarah smiled. Now we build 5 more, 2 years after the successful test flight. Humanity had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible a decade before. The Nevada facility had expanded into 3 major shipyards, one in the United States, one in China, and one in Brazil. Each yard was building ships based on the Prometheus Rising design, but each was also experimenting with improvements and modifications. The human approach to alien technology had proven so successful that the methodology itself had become humanity's greatest innovation. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of Prometheus Rising, now refitted and upgraded with systems they had not even dreamed of when they first made it fly. The ship was preparing for humanity's first official journey beyond the solar system. This was not a test flight. This was first contact, and everyone knew the stakes. Final systems check, Sarah said, settling into the commander's chair. The bridge crew had grown to 8 people, each a specialist in their field, each trained for years. For this moment, Marcus was at his usual station, monitoring the engineering systems. Jessica Torres sat at the helm, the neural interface already syncing with her thoughts. James Okonkwo managed the communications and computer systems. Lu Wei was still there, navigator, his knowledge of the alien star charts invaluable. All systems green across the board, Marcus reported. The quantum drives are running at 98% efficiency. Hull integrity is perfect. Life support is solid for 6 months. Communications array is ready, James added. We've loaded the translation matrices for all known Zathari languages. Prometheus has been coaching me on proper diplomatic protocols. I have done my best, the ship's AI interjected, though I remain uncertain how the collective will react to your presence. The political situation is complex. Sarah nodded. Liu, where are we headed? The navigator pulled up a star chart on the main view screen. A red dot marked their destination. This is the Kepler 442 system, about 12,200 light-years from Earth. According to Prometheus, there's a Zathari mining operation there. Small, only about 50 workers from 3 different species. It's far enough from major population centers that we won't cause a panic, but official enough that our arrival will be reported up the chain of command. In other words, Jessica said with a slight smile. We're going to surprise them, but not terrify them. That's the hope, Sarah agreed. Prometheus, how long will the journey take? At maximum efficiency, approximately 14 hours, the AI responded. The Zathari have been mining valuable minerals from the asteroid belt in that system for 70 years. I should warn you, they will not believe humans possess FTL capability. They will likely assume you stole this vessel. Let them assume, Marcus said. They'll figure out the truth soon enough. The launch was broadcast worldwide. People gathered in homes and public squares to watch as Prometheus Rising lifted off from the Nevada facility. The ship climbed through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a trail of blue-white light that could be seen for hundreds of miles. Then, at the edge of space, the quantum drives engaged. Reality twisted, and the ship vanished from human space. The journey itself was remarkably smooth. The drives hummed their strange quantum song, while the crew went about their duties. Some slept in shifts. Others watched movies or read books in the common area. It was surreal to think they were traveling faster than light, crossing distances that would have taken conventional ships thousands of years. Yet inside the vessel, everything felt normal. Sarah spent much of the journey talking with Prometheus. The AI had become something like a friend over the years, though it still maintained a certain formality. Now, as they approached the moment of first contact, she wanted to understand the Zathari better. Tell me about the collective, she said, sitting alone on the bridge during the night shift. Earth's night, anyway. In deep space, there was no day or night. The Zathari Collective is an alliance of 47 species, from 33 star systems, Prometheus began. It was formed approximately 3,000 years ago, when the original Zathari species encountered their first alien neighbors. Rather than fight, they chose to cooperate. Over millennia, the collective grew as more species joined. What holds them together? Mutual benefit, trade protection. The collective maintains a fleet to defend against hostile forces. They share technology, resources, and knowledge. Each species contributes according to their strengths. It sounds ideal. In theory, yes. In practice, it is complicated. Some species have more political power than others. There are rivalries, disputes. The collective works, but it is not perfect. Sarah smiled. Nothing ever is. How do you think they'll react to us? Prometheus was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. The collective prides itself on technological advancement. You are a reminder that sometimes primitive methods can succeed where sophisticated ones fail. That will be uncomfortable for them. Good, Sarah said. Comfortable people don't change. Maybe it's time the collective was a little uncomfortable. They dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. The transition was smooth. Jessica had become so proficient with the neural interface that she could make the ship dance if she wanted to. The view screen showed a yellow star with 6 planets, one of them a gas giant with rings that sparkled in the starlight. Scanning for the mining operation, Louis announced there in the asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th planets. I'm reading power signatures consistent with Zari technology. 3 ships in dock, probably cargo haulers. 1 station built into the largest asteroid. Any sign they've detected us? Sarah asked. James checked his displays. Not yet. We're still pretty far out, and our hull profile is strange enough that their systems might not recognize us as a ship. Take us in, Sarah ordered. Nice and slow. Let's not startle them too badly. Prometheus Rising moved into the inner system, its engines pushing them toward the asteroid belt. It took 2 hours of steady flight before the mining station sensors finally picked them up. The response was immediate. A message came through, translated automatically by their systems. The voice was high-pitched and rapid, speaking in a language that sounded like water running over rocks. Unknown vessel. This is Zathari Mining Station Kepler 442 Delta. You are entering collective space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately, or you will be fired upon. Sarah took a breath and nodded to James, who opened a channel. Mining Station Kepler 442 Delta. This is the human vessel Prometheus Rising. We mean no harm. We're here to make peaceful contact with the Zathari Collective. There was a long silence. Then the voice came back slower this time, uncertain. Human. That is impossible. Earth is a pre-Kant world. Humans do not have FTL capability. We do now, Sarah replied calmly. And we'd like to talk. Another silence, longer this time. Sarah could imagine the chaos on the mining station. Workers trying to understand how a species that should be primitive had shown up in a starship. Finally, a different voice came through, deeper and more measured. Human vessel, you will hold your position. 3 patrol craft are being dispatched to escort you. Any aggressive action will result in your destruction. Jessica looked at Sarah with raised eyebrows. Sarah nodded, acknowledged. We'll wait right here. The patrol craft arrived 30 minutes later. They were sleek vessels, smaller than Prometheus Rising, but clearly designed for combat. They had weapons pods mounted on their wings and shields that shimmered with energy. They circled the human ship wearily, scanning it from every angle. They're not sure what to make of us, James said, watching his displays. Their scans keep coming back confused. They can tell we're using Zutari technology, but the configuration is all wrong. One of the patrol craft moved closer, its pilot clearly emboldened by having backup. The voice that came through now was different again, speaking in a language that Prometheus translated as belonging to a species called the Thu. Human ship, your vessel. How did you acquire it? Sarah chose her words carefully. This ship crashed on Earth 10 years ago. It was badly damaged and had been abandoned by the Zutari. We repaired it. Impossible. The Thu pilot said that vessel was irredeemably flawed. The quantum drives could not hold calibration. The systems were incompatible. The collective's finest engineers declared it unsalvageable. Your engineers were right, Marcus cut in, unable to help himself. It was unsalvageable the Zutari way, so we fixed it the human way. What does that mean? It means we adapted the technology instead of trying to use it exactly as designed. We rebuilt the systems to work for us, instead of trying to make ourselves work for the systems. The patrol craft were silent for a moment. Then the Thule pilot said, demonstrate your vessel's capabilities. Engage your quantum drives, and move to coordinates we will provide. Jessica looked at Sarah, who nodded. The pilot closed her eyes, syncing fully with the neural interface. The coordinates appeared on her display, a point 50,000 kilometers away. The quantum drives hummed to life. There was that familiar twisting sensation. And then, they were at the new coordinates. The transition had taken less than a second. The patrol craft took a full minute to catch up using their conventional engines. When they arrived, the Thule pilot's voice was shaking slightly. That should not be possible. The drives on that vessel were flawed. They could not achieve such precision. They were flawed for you, Sarah said. They work fine for us. The patrol craft escorted them to the mining station. As they approached, Sarah could see that the station was built directly into a massive asteroid, with docking bays carved into the rock. Ships of various designs were moored there, cargo haulers, more patrol craft, and what looked like a luxury yacht. They docked without incident, though Sarah noticed that the station's weapons were all trained on Prometheus Rising. The Zutari were taking no chances. A delegation met them in the docking bay. The group was exactly what Prometheus had described. Multiple species, each wildly different from the others. There was a tall, thin being, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors. A short, stocky creature, covered in fur with 6 eyes arranged around its head. Something that looked almost like a floating jellyfish, pulsing with light. And a being that resembled a cross between a lizard and a mantis, standing upright on powerful legs. The mantis lizard stepped forward and spoke in that flowing water-like language. The translation came through their earpieces a moment later. I am Coordinator Jathik. This is unprecedented. Humans should not be here. Humans should not have functional spacecraft. Explain how this is possible. Sarah had prepared this speech carefully. 10 years ago, the Zutari dumped a broken ship on Earth. Your people thought we were too primitive to understand it. You were wrong. We studied your technology. We adapted it. We improved it. And now we're here. The 4-armed being made a sound like wind chimes. Improved. You claim to have improved Zutari technology. The quantum drives on this ship operate at 98% efficiency, Marcus said, stepping forward. The original design specs called for 82%. We achieved better performance with less power consumption. We rebuilt the life support system from scratch, because yours was overcomplicated. We streamlined the power distribution network. We improved the hull integrity by 30%. Yes, we improved your technology. The delegation stared at them, the jellyfish being pulsed several different colors before speaking in a language of pure tones. If this is true, you have accomplished something remarkable. But you are still only one ship, one success. The collective has thousands of vessels. For now, Sarah said, we have 5 more ships under construction. In another 2 years, we'll have 20. We're not here to threaten you. We're here because we want what you have. Membership in the galactic community, access to your knowledge, the chance to trade and cooperate. You want to join the collective? Jathek's voice was incredulous. We want a seat at the table, Sarah corrected. We've proven we can take your broken technology and make it work. Imagine what we could do with technology that isn't broken. Imagine what we could contribute to the collective. The delegation conferred among themselves, speaking in multiple languages all at once. It was clear they had not expected this. They had probably expected humans to beg for help, to ask for permission to explore space, to position themselves as inferiors, seeking guidance. Instead, humanity had shown up in a ship that outperformed their own vessels and demanded to be treated as equals. Finally, G spoke. This decision is beyond our authority. We must contact the collective council. You will remain here as our guests while we arrange communications. Of course, Sarah said. We're happy to wait. And while we wait, perhaps we could discuss the technical details of our modifications. I'm sure your engineers would find it fascinating. Over the next 3 days, the human crew demonstrated everything Prometheus Rising could do. They let Zari engineers inspect the quantum drives, the neural interface, the modified life support systems. At first, the alien engineers were skeptical, looking for tricks or hidden technology. But as they examined each system, their skepticism turned to amazement, and then to thoughtful respect. You simply made it work for your species, one engineer said, a being from a species called the Vroth. Rather than trying to make a universal system, you optimized for humans. It is so obvious. Why did we never think of this? Because you were trying to be fair to everyone, Marcus replied. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most inclusive one. Sometimes you need to accept that different species will need different ships. The collective council's response came on the 4th day. A massive starship dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system, a vessel that made Prometheus Rising look like a toy. It was easily 3 times larger, bristling with weapons and shields, a ship designed to make a statement. The council's representative was a Zathari, one of the original species that had founded the collective. She was tall and elegant, with silver skin and large eyes that seemed to see everything. Her name was Ambassador Telsher, and she came aboard Prometheus Rising with a security detail and a team of advisors. Sarah met her in the ship's conference room with Marcus, Jessica, and James at her side. Prometheus's avatar displayed on the wall screen, observing quietly. Your presence here is troubling, Talshara began without preamble. You possess technology that should be beyond your capabilities. You claim to have improved upon designs that our finest engineers deemed failures, and you demand recognition as equals. This is extraordinary arrogance. It's not arrogance, Sarah replied. It's fact. Your people dumped garbage on our planet. We turned that garbage into treasure. We're not asking you to give us anything. We're telling you what we've already accomplished and offering to share our methods in exchange for full membership in the galactic community. And if we refuse, Sarah smiled, then we'll figure it out on our own. We've come this far without your help, but it would be easier for everyone if we worked together. Talshara studied her for a long moment. You are either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both. The council is deeply divided on how to respond to humanity. Some see you as a threat. Others see potential. A few believe we should have uplifted you properly, instead of leaving you to your own devices. We don't need uplifting, Marcus said firmly. We need partnership. The ambassador turned her gaze to him. You truly believe you are our equals? I believe we have something you don't, Marcus replied. We know how to make things work when they're broken. We know how to adapt. We know how to improvise. Your collective has amazing technology. But from what we've seen, you don't know what to do when that technology fails. We do. Talshara was quiet for a moment. Then surprisingly she laughed, a sound like bells ringing. "You are bold humans. Very well. The Council has authorized me to offer you a trial membership in the collective. You will have access to our knowledge and our territories. In exchange, you will share your adaptive integration techniques and assist with problems our own engineers cannot solve. After 5 years, the arrangement will be reviewed." Sarah felt her heart racing. This was it. This was everything they had worked for. "We accept. However," Talshara continued, "there are those in the collective who believe you are dangerous. They will test you, challenge you, try to prove that your success was luck rather than skill. You should prepare for resistance." "We've been preparing for 10 years, Sarah said. "Let them try." The return to Earth took 14 hours, but it felt like minutes. The crew was jubilant. They had done it. Humanity had a seat at the galactic table. When they emerged from FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system, they found a welcoming committee waiting. 6 ships, the rest of humanity's small fleet, each one a variation on the Prometheus design. Sarah looked at her crew and smiled. "We're not alone anymore," she said. "Humanity just joined the galaxy." On the view screen, Earth hung in space, beautiful and blue. And beyond it, the stars waited, not as an impossible dream, but as a new frontier that humanity was ready to explore. 5 years had passed since humanity joined the Zathari collective, and the galaxy had learned what it meant to underestimate Earth. What had started as a trial membership had become something no one had anticipated. Humanity had not simply joined the galactic community, they had revolutionized it. The Nevada facility was now called Earth Station Prime, and it had grown into the largest shipyard in the Sol system. 12 human-designed vessels sat in dock at any given time, each one different from the others. Some were built for speed, sleek, and fast. Others were heavy cargo haulers designed to move massive amounts of material across star systems. A few were research vessels, equipped with laboratories that combined human and alien technology in ways that surprised everyone who saw them. But the fleet that mattered most right now was the one gathering at the edge of collective space. Humanity's reputation as fixers had spread through the galaxy. When something broke and no one else could repair it, they called humans. When technology failed and engineers gave up, humans figured it out. In 5 years, human teams had solved problems on 17 different worlds, earning respect and, more importantly, trust. That trust was about to be tested. Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of Prometheus Rising, now the flagship of humanity's fleet. The ship had been upgraded twice in 5 years, incorporating technology from a dozen different species, but its core remained the same, a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien innovation. She was older now, approaching 50, with gray streaking through her black hair, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. "Status report," she said, settling into the commander's chair. Marcus Webb looked up from his engineering station. He was 55 now and refused to retire despite Sarah's suggestions. "All systems are optimal. The new shield generators we borrowed from the Vroth are running at 110% of their rated capacity. I still don't know how they're doing that because we're running them at a lower frequency than the Vroth do," James Okonkwo said from the communication station. He was 30 now, one of the younger senior officers, but his understanding of alien technology was unmatched. "The Vroth optimized for maximum power. We optimize for maximum efficiency. That's the human way," Jessica Torres said from the helm. The former fighter pilot was now Admiral Torres in command of Earth's entire fleet, but she still piloted Prometheus Rising personally whenever possible. The neural interface had become like a second skin to her. "Admir, we're receiving a transmission from Collective Command," James announced. "It's encrypted at the highest level. Put it through," Sarah ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing Ambassador Talshara. The Zathari looked worried, her silver skin darker than usual, a sign of stress in her species. "Commander Chen, Admiral Torres, the situation has deteriorated faster than we anticipated," the Cray Sarah asked. "Yes, they've destroyed 3 more outposts in the past week. Their fleet is massing at the edge of Sector 7. Our analysts believe they're preparing for a major offensive." The Cray were a hive mind species that humanity had learned about shortly after joining the collective. They reproduced rapidly, built ships quickly, and expanded aggressively. Each CRA was connected to all others through a quantum neural network, allowing them to coordinate perfectly. They didn't negotiate. They didn't trade. They simply consumed resources and grew. The collective had been at war with the Kree for 3 years. At first, it had seemed like an easy conflict. The collective had superior technology, better ships, more experienced commanders. But the Kree had numbers. For every ship the collective destroyed, the Kree built 3 more. For every world they lost, they colonized 2 others. The war was not going well. "What do your military commanders say?" Sarah asked. Talshara's expression was grim. "They believe we're losing. The Kree adapt too quickly. Every strategy we use works once, maybe twice. Then they counter it. Our fleets are designed for precision warfare, tactical strikes, superior positioning, technological advantage. The Kree don't care about tactics. They just overwhelm us with numbers. And that's why you called us," Marcus said. "The Collective Council has authorized me to make a request. We need help, not just advisory help. We need you to fight." Sarah exchanged glances with her senior staff. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Humanity had 12 ships ready for combat, with 8 more under construction. It was a tiny force compared to the collective thousands of vessels. But those 12 ships represented something different, something the galaxy had never seen before. "We'll help," Sarah said. "But we do this our way. Your way. You've been trying to fight the Kree with your best ships, your newest technology, your most advanced fleets, and you're losing. We're going to fight them with your worst ships, your oldest technology, your junk." Talshara blinked, clearly confused. "I don't understand," Marcus grinned. "Give us your decommissioned fleet. All those old ships you've retired because they're outdated or incompatible, or just plain broken. Give us 6 months and we'll give you an armada." The Collective Council took 3 days to approve the plan. In the end, they agreed because they had no other choice. The Kree were winning, and conventional strategies had failed. If humanity wanted to try something unconventional, then so be it. Earth Station Prime became a hub of activity unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships arrived daily from across the collective. Old cargo haulers, decommissioned patrol craft, mining vessels, exploration ships, even a few ancient warships from conflicts fought centuries ago. They came from 17 different species, each one designed according to different principles, each one incompatible with the others. To the Zathari engineers who delivered them, they were junk. To humans, they were opportunity. "Look at this beauty," Marcus said, standing in front of a massive Roth cargo hauler. The ship was 200 years old, its hull scarred and dented, its engines barely functional. "She's got a power plant designed to push 3 times her current weight. If we strip out the cargo holds and replace them with weapons and shield generators, she becomes a pocket battleship," finished Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had become one of humanity's lead engineers. "Heavy armor, massive firepower, slow but tough." "Exactly. And this one over here." Marcus walked to a sleek Thu exploration vessel. "This thing is fast, really fast, but it's got no weapons and no shields. If we add some human-designed missile pods and a decent defensive array, fast attack craft," Yuki said. "Hit-and-run tactics." All across the station, human engineers were performing similar assessments. Each ship was evaluated not for what it was, but for what it could become. They mixed technologies without regard for conventional wisdom. A Vroth power plant might end up powering a Thulhal with human weapons and Zathari shields. If it worked, it didn't matter that it violated every engineering principle the collective had established over millennia. Prometheus, the AI that had come with the original crashed ship, watched all of this with what might have been amusement. The AI had changed over the years, becoming less rigid, more adaptable. Working with humans had taught it that rules were guidelines, not absolutes. "You are building chaos," Prometheus observed one day as Sarah reviewed the schematics for the hybrid fleet. "We are building adaptability," Sarah corrected. "Every one of these ships is different. Everyone has unique capabilities. The Kree might be a hive mind, but their tactics are predictable because they're coordinated. Our fleet will be unpredictable because every ship fights differently. The collective builds standardized fleets for a reason. It ensures compatibility, simplifies logistics, allows for coordinated tactics. And it creates predictability, Sarah said. The Krail know exactly what a collective battleship can do, because they're all the same. But when they face us, they won't know if they're fighting a heavy brawler or a fast striker or a long-range bombardment platform. They'll have to adapt to each ship individually. That is assuming your crews can effectively operate such diverse vessels. Sarah smiled. We've spent 5 years learning to make broken alien technology work. Trust me, we can handle a little diversity. 6 months later, the hybrid armada was ready. 73 ships, each one unique, each one a patchwork of technologies from across the collective. The crews were international. Humans from every nation on Earth trained in the use of alien systems, experienced in adapting on the fly. Admiral Jessica Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship, a rebuilt Vroth battleship they had named Indomitable. The ship was ugly, covered in mismatched armor plating and bristling with weapons from 4 different species. But it worked. Every system had been tested and retested. Every weapon could fire. Every shield could hold. Fleet status, Jessica ordered. The reports came in from 73 different ships. All green already. Collective Command is transmitting coordinates for the engagement zone. James reported he was serving as Jessica's communications officer for this mission. The Krail have masked a fleet of 200 ships in Sector 7. Collective forces are falling back. We're being asked to buy them time to regroup. 200 ships against 73. Not great odds. But the Krail ships were smaller, weaker individually than collective vessels. The real problem was their coordination. Every Kray ship knew instantly what every other Krail ship was doing. They moved like a school of fish, reacting to threats in perfect unison. "Tell Collective Command we're on our way," Jessica said. "All ships, engage quantum drives. Let's show the Krail what humanity can do." The fleet jumped together, 73 different vessels all arriving at the edge of Sector 7 simultaneously. The Krail were waiting, their ships arranged in a massive formation that looked almost organic, like a giant organism floating in space. "They're hailing us," James said. "Or rather, they're broadcasting at us." The Kray don't really do conversations. And what are they saying? Resistance is irrelevant. Assimilation is inevitable. Surrender will reduce casualties. The usual hive mind propaganda. Jessica smiled coldly. "Broadcast this in response. Go to hell." The Kray fleet moved first, surging forward in perfect coordination. 200 ships advancing as one, their weapons charging, their tactics flawless. They expected the human fleet to fall back to try to maintain distance, to use the superior range of collective weapons to whittle down their numbers. Instead, the human fleet scattered. 73 ships broke formation and spread out in seemingly random directions. Fast attack craft accelerated to incredible speeds, darting around the Kray fleet flanks. Heavy brawlers moved forward, shields blazing, ready to take punishment. Long-range bombardment platforms hung back, their massive weapons beginning to charge. The Kray hive mind hesitated for a fraction of a second. This was not how collective fleets fought. This was chaos, disorder. There was no pattern to analyze, no formation to counter. And in that moment of hesitation, humanity struck. The fast attack craft hit first, launching volleys of missiles at the Kray rear guard. The missiles were human-designed, each one slightly different, each one following unpredictable flight paths. The CRA's automated defenses struggled to track them all. Explosions blossomed across 3 crash ships. Then the heavy brawlers arrived at the front lines. These were the rebuilt cargo haulers and mining vessels. Massive and slow, but incredibly tough. They crashed into the Krail formation like battering rams, their shields absorbing incoming fire, while their weapons tore into enemy ships at close range. The long-range bombardment platforms opened up next, hurling projectiles at near-relativistic speeds. These were railguns and mass drivers. Simple human technology scaled up to ship-killing size. They weren't as sophisticated as collective energy weapons, but they hit like sledgehammers. Kray fleet is trying to reform, James reported. They're pulling back their forward elements and tightening their formation. They're adapting, Jessica said. Good. Let's give them something else to adapt to. All ships patterned Delta 7. The human fleet shifted again. The fast attack craft pulled back while the heavy brawlers spread out. Medium cruisers, rebuilt patrol craft with balanced weapons and decent speed moved into the gaps. The formation looked almost like a net, with spaces deliberately left open. The Krail, seeing what looked like weaknesses, moved to exploit them. Their ships poured into the gaps, trying to split the human fleet and destroy the ships piecemeal. But the gaps were traps. As Kray's ships entered the openings, they found themselves surrounded by crossfire from multiple angles. The human ships had positioned themselves to create kill zones, areas where every angle was covered by weapons. It was a tactic borrowed from ancient Earth naval battles, something the Kray hive mind had never encountered. 20 Kray ships were destroyed in the first trap, 15 more in the second. They're learning, James warned. Craft forces are pulling back and reforming at a distance. They're not falling for the gaps anymore. Of course they're not, Jessica said. They're a hive mind. They only make the same mistake once. All ships pattern Echo 3. The human fleet reorganized again, this time forming a loose sphere, with the heavy brawlers at the center, and faster ships orbiting around them. It was a defensive formation designed to weather an assault, while providing overlapping fields of fire. The Kray obliged, launching a massive coordinated attack. Every ship fired simultaneously, a wave of energy weapons and projectiles that lit up space like a second sun. The human shields held barely. Hull breaches on Indomitable, Marcus reported from engineering. Decks 7 and 8 are exposed to vacuum. Shield generators are down to 60%. Status on the rest of the fleet. We lost 3 ships. The fast attack craft, Quicksilver, Razor, and Dart. Heavy damage to 5 more. But we're still in the fight. Then we keep fighting, Jessica said. All ships pattern Foxtrot 9. We're going to punch through their center and split their fleet. The heavy brawlers charged forward, weapons blazing, shields glowing so brightly they looked like small suns. The rest of the fleet followed, creating a spearhead that drove straight into the heart of the Krail formation. It was brutal. Ships on both sides were destroyed in the close-range slugging match. But the human vessels had one advantage the Krail couldn't match: adaptability. When shields failed, crews rerouted power from non-essential systems. When weapons overheated, engineers found ways to cool them faster. When hull breaches threatened to destroy ships, damage control teams sealed the gaps with whatever materials they had on hand. The CRA fought with perfect coordination, but perfection was brittle. When a human ship did something unexpected, like ramming a Kray vessel or using mining lasers as improvised weapons, the hive mind had to pause and recalculate. And every pause was an opportunity. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it finally ended, the Kray fleet had been reduced to 70 ships, and those were in retreat. The human fleet had lost 18 ships, and another 20 were badly damaged. But they had won. Jessica stood on the bridge of Indomitable, exhausted and covered in sweat. The ship around her was a wreck. Smoke filled the corridors. Half the lights were out, and there was a hull breach 2 decks above the bridge that made the whole structure groan ominously. Status of the Kray? She asked. They're pulling back to their home territory, James reported. Collective command is saying they've never seen the Krail retreat before. Ever. Good, Jessica said. Let them remember this. Let them remember what happens when they underestimate humanity. A new transmission came through. Ambassador Talshara, her expression stunned. Admiral Torres, the Collective Council wants to know how you achieved this victory. Our analysts have been watching the battle. Your tactics should not have worked. Your fleet was outnumbered. Your ships are old, yet you won. Jessica smiled tiredly. We won because our ships are old. Because they're all different. Because the Krail couldn't predict what we would do next. You've been fighting them with perfect coordination and superior technology. We fought them with chaos and improvisation. And against a hive mind that expects perfection, chaos wins. Talshara was quiet for a long moment. The Council wishes to hire humanity for additional missions. We have many problems that require unconventional solutions. We'll be happy to help, Jessica said. For the right price, of course. And Admiral, on behalf of the Collective, thank you. You saved thousands of lives today. Just doing what humans do best, Jessica replied. Making broken things work. When Prometheus Rising finally limped back to Earth Station Prime 3 weeks later, the ship was covered in scorch marks and dents. But the crew was alive, and the mission was complete. Sarah stood on the observation deck, watching as Indomitable and the other surviving ships came home. Marcus joined her, his left arm in a sling from an injury during the battle. "We lost good people out there," he said quietly. "I know," Sarah replied. "But we proved something important. We proved that humanity belongs here, not as students or junior partners. As equals, think the collective will see it that way." Sarah smiled. After today, they don't have a choice. Below them, Earth turned slowly in space, and above them, the stars shone. Humanity had taken its first step as a true galactic power, and the galaxy would never be the same. 10 years had passed since an alien ship had crashed in the Nevada desert and changed humanity's destiny forever. Earth had transformed from a single planet species into a galactic power that commanded respect across 100 star systems. The journey from that first crashed wreck to the present had been remarkable, but what made it extraordinary was how humanity had gotten here. Not through conquest or luck, but through sheer stubborn ingenuity. Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of Earth Station Prime, watching as ships came and went from the massive orbital facility. The station had grown so large that it could be seen from Earth's surface at night, a bright star that moved slowly across the sky. Hundreds of ships docked here at any given time, and only about half of them were human. The rest belonged to alien species who had come to learn from humanity's unique approach to technology. She was 60 now, with silver hair and lines around her eyes that came from decades of hard work. But she had no plans to retire. There was still too much to do, too much to see, too many problems to solve. "You look thoughtful," Marcus said, joining her at the window. He was 65 and had finally accepted a cane after his knees started giving him trouble. His hands were scarred from years of working with machinery, but they were still steady enough to rebuild an engine when needed. "Just remembering," Sarah said. 10 years ago, we didn't know if we could make that wreck fly. Now we're building ships for half the collective, not just building them, teaching others how to build them." Marcus pointed to a section of the station where a group of Roth engineers were working alongside human technicians. "That's the real change. We're not just fixing things anymore. We're showing everyone else how to think differently." Earth Station Prime had become more than a shipyard. It was a university, a research center, and a cultural exchange hub, all rolled into one. Alien engineers came to study what humanity called adaptive integration, the art of making incompatible technologies work together. It was a skill that seemed natural to humans, but revolutionary to species that had spent millennia developing standardized, predictable systems. The Zathari had opened 5 satellite campuses on different worlds where humans taught their methods. The courses were always overbooked. Every species in the collective wanted to learn how humans took broken, outdated, or incompatible technology and transformed it into something better than new. "The delegation from the Cray is arriving in an hour," Marcus reminded her. "Are you ready for that?" Sarah smiled. "As ready as I'll ever be to meet a hive mind that tried to destroy the collective." The war with the Cray had ended 3 years ago, not with humanity's victory, but with a series of victories that had convinced the hive mind that expansion into collective space was too costly. The Krail had been surprised, then confused, then grudgingly impressed by humanity's tactics. For the first time in their species' history, they had encountered an enemy that was more adaptable than they were. The peace treaty had been signed aboard Prometheus Rising. With Sarah and Admiral Torres representing humanity, the Cray had asked for one thing in exchange for peace. They wanted to learn how humans thought. The hive mind had realized that their greatest weakness was rigid thinking, and they wanted to understand how a species of individuals could be so flexible. The Cray delegation arrived exactly on time, transported by one of their distinctive bioships that looked more grown than built. The Krail themselves were unsettling to look at, insectoid beings with multiple limbs and eyes that glowed with internal light, but they had proven honorable in their negotiations, and Sarah had learned to appreciate their directness. The lead Cray, they didn't use individual names since they were all part of the same consciousness, greeted Sarah with the gesture humans had taught them, a simple nod of acknowledgement. When the Cray spoke, it was through a translation device that turned their clicking sounds into words. "Humanity has changed the collective," the Cray said without preamble. "You have introduced chaos where there was order. unpredictability where there was certainty. At first, we believed this was weakness. We were wrong. I'm glad you see it that way, Sarah said carefully. We wish to establish an exchange program. Krail observers will study human methods. Human observers will study Kray coordination. Both species will benefit. Sarah hadn't expected that. The Kray were offering genuine cooperation, something they had never done with any species before. We accept. I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. The Kra delegation stayed for a week, observing everything from ship construction to problem-solving sessions. They were particularly fascinated by how human teams worked. The arguments, the debates, the way individuals could disagree and still find solutions. For a hive mind that moved as one, the idea of productive conflict was revolutionary. Meanwhile, the first of humanity's true starships was taking shape in the construction bay. Endeavor was unlike anything humanity had built before, where Prometheus Rising and its siblings had been adapted alien technology. Endeavor was designed from scratch, using principles learned from a decade of working with the collective's knowledge. The ship was enormous, 3 times the size of Prometheus Rising, with engines that combined human engineering with quantum principles taken from 6 different species. Its hull was a composite material developed by human metallurgists working with Vroth material scientists. Its weapons were human-designed railguns powered by Thule energy cores. Its shields used Zathari technology modified with human failsafes. It was in every sense a representation of what humanity had become. Not purely human, not purely alien, but something new, something better. Sarah walked through Endeavor's corridors during the final inspection, accompanied by the ship's designated captain, a young woman named Chen Li, who happened to be Sarah's niece. The younger Chen had grown up during humanity's expansion into space and represented the new generation, who saw the stars as home rather than frontier. She's beautiful, Li said, running her hand along the bulkhead. Prometheus Rising was amazing for its time, but this is what we were always meant to build. Your parents wanted you to be a doctor, Sarah said with amusement. I am a doctor of broken starships, Li grinned. Besides, someone has to carry on the family tradition of fixing things that shouldn't work. The launch ceremony for Endeavor was broadcast across the entire collective. Representatives from 30 species attended in person, gathering at Earth Station Prime to witness humanity's achievement. Ambassador Telshara was there, looking older, but still elegant in her formal robes. Admiral Torres was there too, now semi-retired, but still commanding respect wherever she went. Marcus stood beside Sarah, both of them dressed in formal uniforms that felt uncomfortable after years of wearing work clothes. The original Prometheus Rising had been moved to a place of honor, in orbit around Earth, transformed into a museum. Visitors could walk through its corridors and see where humanity's journey to the stars had begun. The ship's AI, Prometheus, had been offered a new body, a state-of-the-art computer core that would give it more processing power than it had ever dreamed of. But the AI had chosen to stay in its original crystal matrix, in the ship that had crashed in the desert so long ago. This is where I belong, Prometheus had said when Sarah asked about it. I came here broken and was made whole. This ship is my home. Now, as Sarah stood on the observation deck, watching Endeavor's engines begin their startup sequence, Prometheus's voice came through her communication device. Commander Chen, I wanted to thank you. For what? Sarah asked, though she thought she knew. For proving me wrong. When I first activated in that desert facility, I told you that humans were too primitive to understand Zathari technology. I was incorrect. You didn't just understand it. You surpassed it. You taught the galaxy that perfection is not the goal. Adaptability is. We couldn't have done it without you, Prometheus. You were our guide, even when you didn't believe in us. I learned something from watching humanity over these 10 years. The AI continued. I learned that being broken is not the end. It is, as you often say, an opportunity. I was deemed a failure by my creators, but humans saw potential in failure. You saw potential in me. For that, I am grateful. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. You're not a failure, Prometheus. You're family. The launch countdown reached 0. Endeavor's engines flared to life. Brilliant blue-white light that lit up the darkness of space. The massive ship rose slowly from its construction bay, climbing with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. As it cleared the station, its quantum drives engaged, and reality twisted around it. The ship vanished, heading out on its maiden voyage to the far side of the collective. It would be gone for 6 months, exploring regions of space that humanity had never seen. But it would come back, and when it did, there would be other ships ready to follow. "We did it," Marcus said quietly. "We took garbage and turned it into a gateway to the stars." Sarah nodded. "And now the stars are ours." Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation had solidified. They were the fixers, the adapters, the species that made impossible things possible. Alien civilizations that had spent millennia developing rigid, perfect systems now sought human help when those systems failed. Earth had become wealthy beyond measure, trading not just in goods, but in knowledge. The knowledge of how to think differently. But wealth and reputation weren't what mattered most to Sarah. What mattered was standing here, looking at a ship humanity had built with its own hands, knowing that humans were exploring the galaxy as equals rather than students. The Zathari Council had issued a formal apology 3 years ago, acknowledging that dumping their failed prototype on Earth had been a mistake. Not because it violated protocols, but because they had misjudged humanity so completely. They had assumed humans were too primitive to matter. Instead, humans had become essential. "What do you think the galaxy will look like in another 10 years? Marcus asked. Sarah considered the question. "Different, better, more adaptable. We've shown everyone that there's more than one way to solve a problem. That diversity isn't a weakness, it's strength. Think we'll still be around to see it?" "I plan to be," Sarah said. "We've got too much work left to do." A new ship was approaching the station, and a design Sarah didn't recognize. It was small, sleek, and painted in colors that seemed to shift as it moved. James Okonkwo's voice came through her communicator. "Commander, we're being hailed by an unknown vessel. They're requesting permission to dock." "What species?" Sarah asked. "That's the thing. We don't know. They're not in the collective database. This is a first contact situation." Sarah felt excitement surge through her. After 10 years, humanity was still discovering new neighbors. Grant them permission. And James, get a team together. Let's see if they have anything broken we can fix. Marcus laughed. "You're incurable. I prefer helpful," Sarah replied. "Besides, it's what we do." The unknown ship docked smoothly. The beings that emerged were unlike anything in the collective. 6-limbed, covered in crystalline scales with eyes that glowed soft green. They approached the greeting committee with a mixture of curiosity and what looked like hope. Their leader, identified by a crest of longer scales, spoke through a translation device they carried. "We are the Velkari. We have traveled far seeking help. Our ship is failing. Our technology is old. We were told that if anyone could help us, it would be humans." Sarah smiled and stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth Station Prime. We're really good at fixing things. Let's take a look at your ship." As she walked with the Velkari toward their vessel, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought humanity here. It had started with garbage, a broken ship dumped on Earth because aliens thought humans were too stupid to understand it. But humans had proven that being underestimated was an advantage. They had taken that garbage and turned it into gold. More importantly, they had changed the galaxy's perspective on what was possible. Failure was no longer permanent. Broken was no longer unfixable. Different was no longer incompatible. Humanity had taught the galaxy to see opportunity where others saw only problems. Behind her, Prometheus Rising hung in orbit, a monument to where humanity had been. Above her endeavor, blazed across the stars, a promise of where humanity was going. And around her, thousands of beings from dozens of species worked together, learning from each other, building a future that was brighter than any one civilization could create alone. A young human engineer passed by, laughing with a Vroth technician, about some joke Sarah didn't hear. Human children born on Mars chased each other down the corridor, their games watched over by a fool nanny who had come to Earth to study child development. In a nearby laboratory, scientists from 6 species were collaborating on a project that combined human intuition with alien mathematics. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not technology, not weapons, not even the ability to fix broken things. It was perspective. It was the understanding that there were always other ways to solve problems, other viewpoints to consider, other possibilities to explore. Marcus joined her again as she finished the initial assessment of the Valkyrie ship. "Well," he asked. "It's a mess," Sarah said cheerfully. "Incompatible systems, outdated drives, structural damage throughout. Give me 3 months, and we'll have it flying better than it did when it was new. Think they have anything to teach us?" "Everyone has something to teach us," Sarah said. "That's the whole point." As the sun set on Earth far below, casting long shadows across the planet's surface, Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Earth Station Prime and smiled. Humanity had come so far from that day in the desert when an alien ship had crashed and changed everything. They had proven themselves to be more than the aliens expected. They had earned their place among the stars, not through force or genius, but through determination and the simple refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. The stars stretched out before her, infinite and inviting. Somewhere out there, Endeavor was exploring new worlds. Somewhere, human engineers were teaching aliens the art of adaptive integration. Somewhere, problems were being solved in ways that no one had imagined before humanity arrived. And somewhere on some distant world, another species was looking up at the stars and wondering what was out there. One day, they would find out. And when they did, humanity would be there to help them reach for those stars, just as humanity had reached for them. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and challenges and opportunities. And humanity, once dismissed as too primitive to matter, was now helping to shape its future. One fixed ship, one solved problem, one impossible achievement at a time. Sarah touched the window, feeling the faint vibration of the station around her. The pulse of countless lives working toward countless dreams. This was humanity's new dawn. Not the end of a journey, but the beginning of countless more. "Commander Chen," a voice called. "We've got another broken ship requesting assistance. Are you available?" Sarah turned away from the window, a grin on her face. "Always," she said. "That's what we do. We fix things." And as she walked back into the bustle of the station, surrounded by humans and aliens working side by side, Sarah knew that the best part of the story wasn't what humanity had accomplished in the past 10 years. It was what they would accomplish in the next 10, and the 10 after that, and all the years to come. The aliens had dumped their failed ship on Earth, thinking it was garbage. Humanity had rebuilt it to conquer the stars. But conquest wasn't the point. The point was showing everyone, human and alien alike, that nothing was ever truly broken beyond repair. Everything could be fixed, adapted, improved. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy, and it was a gift that would echo across the stars for generations to come.